get the pollen out of there and say, okay, plant A, dash 4967, it's got to mate with dash whatever. Walk over to that, take that, boom, put the bag on there, shake it on that developing ear, and then that's the male and the female.
So high tech.
There's the ear. There's the ear. But it's all hand pollinated. You know, it's because what we want is when that breeder says this male with this female is going to give me the best hybrid, that's what we got to produce for them. And in some cases, they're creating the parent lines, which then become the hybrid that eventually gets sold to the grower. Because when the grower buys it, what you'll see here is you look down here,
Come on in.
you look at the difference between a lot of these varieties. It's actually not varietal differences. A lot of it is whether it's a hybrid or a parent. So just like the reason why our kids are all beautiful and smarter than we are is because the parents are a lot wimpier than the adults, than the kids. And we'll show you down to the ears. The typical ear on a parental line is maybe this big, and a typical ear on a hybrid line is twice as big as it. So that's called hybrid vigor. So what you're doing is taking a male that's going to breed well with a female, put them together, and you got a beautiful baby. And that's basically what hybrid corn is about. But you can see why people don't try to grow their own corn, because what they get out of it is not nearly as productive as what they could do if they bought the hybrid, which is why they buy seed every year. Now some people ask, well, why don't they just take that corn ear now and grow that out? Here's the problem. When you grow that out, part of it's going to go back to individual parents. Only a small percentage is going to end up still as the hybrid, because it's called segregation. The genetics are going to go back out, right? And your kids have kids, they don't look like, they're not retaining the properties that they have as individual. They're then bred back into that, which is why in every hybrid crop, the farmers buy it every year. So back to your question around controlling where seed comes from, it has nothing to do with GMOs. It's because they want the hybrid, and that's because of the properties that that hybrid has.
You get a better production.
Absolutely, and think about what a farmer gets paid on. They get paid on yield, right? And so the better yield. But also it has the properties they need. So when that breeder is telling us, take this one with this one, he's saying, I know from this one it's going to have the tolerance to this disease. From this one it might have bigger ears or larger kernels on the ear, etc. He's looking for traits, he or she is looking for traits on individual parents that he knows will combine well. And some of the traits are complex. You actually have to bring it in. Just like eye colors and others, it's influenced by both parents. Plant traits are the same way. Some have to be brought in both on the male and the female in order to combine it into the hybrid.
You guys can figure out what combination will work best in, say, South America or Africa or the United States?
And that's why we don't, remember your question about testing. That's why a lot of it is not, we don't do the testing here, we do the production here. Because in the end, when he or she is breeding for a farmer in Illinois or a farmer in Ecuador or Peru, they got to take it back there and say, will it actually perform under those conditions, you know, that soil, that water, that climate condition, etc. The final test has got to be in that field where it's destined to be sold.
They bring it back and you guys tweak it for them?
Yep, so they bring it to us, we'll produce the seed to get enough for them to do the test, and then they'll take it back there. And then once they decide on this is the one that's going to be the final product, we'll do that too. We'll produce enough to sell for millions of acres for farmers in that particular country or that particular climate. But that's a great question, because the testing has to be done in the location where it's eventually going to be sold, because you want to be as close to what that farmer's conditions are in order to know it's actually going to work.
You guys have to have a lot of communication going on with everybody.
Absolutely. And it's also why when I ask you not to fill the barcodes, that's what that is. What that basically is, that you put that barcode, it'll tell you everything about the pedigree, where it's destined, et cetera, because that's the way we track it. So everything that we harvest, everything we produce is all barcoded, every little bag of seed, every big bag of seed, and then they know exactly what it is. Because when you deliver that to a farmer, that's their lifeblood, right? And you got to be darn certain that it's the right genetics, it's the right material, it's what they think they're buying, is what we're actually giving them.
There's no problems if it's a windy and the pollen blowing over to...
Corn, it's not as big a concern. Corn pollen is actually pretty heavy. You still do have to watch it, which is one of the reasons why we'll do a lot of border crops. So what we'll do is, for the stuff we're crossing, we'll put a border all around of corn that we really don't care about. We just take a commercial hybrid that's out there just to provide a windbreak all the way around that. You do have to be concerned, but corn is a lot heavier than a lot of other pollen. Other plants, it's a major concern. It'll blow wherever because the pollen is much lighter. This corn tends to be a little heavier pollen, so it's not as, but it is a concern, which is why we actually will use buffers around our plants as a windbreak to do that. The other thing I want to show you is one of the things we do on our farm. Water is a major concern everywhere, right? But for here, we want to be as judicious in our water use as we can. So when we actually plant the corn seed, our planters have drip tube irrigation in the planter itself. So when the planter's coming through there and laying the seed in, it's also laying a drip line of irrigation. And it's not just water, it's actually what's called fertigation. So that's the way we deliver all our fertilizer to. So think about where a plant gets, where does a plant get its most of its nutrients and the water? From its what? The roots, right? So when you have it in your drip tube, it allows you to deliver the water, your fertilizer, much more effectively just to the roots. We've literally saved millions of gallons of water. Fertilizer load is much lower here. When you're spreading, like on your lawn, you're spreading that. Lawn, you have to do the whole thing, but here, we don't want fertilizer here. We want fertilizer at the roots. We want the water at the roots. So this drip fertigation really works well. It allows us to really effectively deliver what we need, water, fertilizer, just to the roots. And then the other piece you'll see that we talk a lot about is called integrated pest management. What we do, we actually have people full-time job is what's called a scout. And what they're doing, we talked about the worms and beneficial insects, they're out there looking at the crop, saying, is there damage? Do I need to do anything about it? But they're also looking at what are the beneficial insect populations. So if they're starting to see some caterpillar damage, well, it's looking pretty bad. But here are some insects that we know will prey upon that caterpillar. So I'm not going to worry about it because I know that the beneficial population is high enough. It's going to take care of the pest problem we have. But that scouting is always the first stage. Just like in your house, if you don't see any ants, you're not going to spray, right? If you see 1 or 2 ants, probably not going to worry about it. If you walk down the kitchen and there's thousands of ants there, you're probably calling somebody to say, "Help me!" Right? That's there, right. But that's the way we do our pest management. So it's about using all the tools there, and that's what integrated pest. My dad was a carpenter, right? He used to always say, "Don't leave for a job unless you got all the tools you need." And that's what the integrated pest management is. Do you have the scouting? Do you have the beneficial insects? Do you have biologicals? And in cases where we need it, do you have the pesticides? Do we use pesticides? Absolutely. It's a valuable tool for every farmer. But because we're able to do all those things, we're really proud of our pesticide record, frankly. We're the largest seed company, which is the largest sector in the state, and we use 0.55% of all the restricted use pesticides sold in the state of Hawaii. All right? On 8,700 acres, we use less than a quarter teaspoon per acre per day. Quarter teaspoon, you guys are chefs, you know that's not very much, right? But it's because you're thinking about it in a much more holistic approach. You're thinking about the health of the soil, you're thinking about the health of the crop, you're thinking about what crops can I plant next door to bring in other ways to control that pest. And yeah, pesticides, we're going to use them, but we're going to be judicious, and we're going to use the ones that are going to work, and we're going to use the most specific ones we can. We try to get that number out there too, because a lot of things you see online, dousing the crops, or drown, no. We're able to do things on this farm that, frankly, we're really proud of. And it's all about the principles of integrated pest management. And that's what anybody like me as a biologist, that's what you want to do. Take advantage of all the tools and use them when you need them, but use all the other tools first before you get there. So this is our corn birth control. That's what we do. That's what we do. And it's really important here. It is really important here. Go down to the demos?
Yeah, sure.
Let's go talk some veggies.